Okay, so this video we will talk about taking that Elvis elevation and depth foundation spatial data and clipping it using a rectangle that we've drawn in Civil 3D. So we will need Elvis data, we will need Civil 3D, and we will need QGIS. So I'll have those three open. What I've done here, of course, is I've come to my order data, I've done my draw, I've drawn my rectangle, clicking in here and making my rectangle, search, and I have ordered my 5 meter DEM. So I've just opened that up. There's only one available, which is completely fine. And where it's asking for the coordinate system, you just want to make sure that in there we've got the map grid of Australia Zone 55, GDA 94 for this particular project. So I've had that emailed to me and I have already unzipped it and downloaded it, which means that I can now come across to my QGIS, and in my QGIS I can browse for that in Explorer. So I just want to come to my downloads, and it's here, my 5 meter DEM that I've unzipped, and it's got a few additional files. Just always make sure that you leave it there with its additional files, and you can just pull it into your scene. Now when you do that, the first bit of data that you pull into a scene, you'll notice down here that the EPSG code will change from WGS 84 to the EPSG code which is associated with your coordinate reference system. So this project is now kind of knows that most of what you're going to be working in is this projected MGA 55 coordinate reference system. So now that we have that, we can come across to our Civil 3D, and I will just run through this again. So we will do a new file, and because I'm using the ANZs, I have an ANZ file. You might have something else, but it is really good to use the templates because it alleviates issues to do with metric and imperial problems. While I'm in here, I will come to my settings, right click on my drawing, edit drawing settings, and just type in MGA-55 into here, and that will bring up using GDA 94 datum, apply, OK. Then of course when we come to our geolocation, we can turn our map on, doesn't matter which one, they're all pretty pretty. And oh, I didn't zoom in to see my wheel, so I might have upset it. We'll see. All right, another new experiment. Hopefully that works. You're supposed to zoom in to see the wheel, and then in here, this is where I want to draw my specific rectangle that I want to clip my DEM with. So I could make myself a new layer. You will notice with Civil 3D, and particularly with the template files, that Civil 3D creates a bunch of very logically named layers for you. So you might want to make a new one. I'm not sure. It's a bit funny about making new ones. So I might just keep this on 0 for the moment. Yeah, I'll do that. And then what I want to do in here is just type in REC for rectangle, and I can pick a point anywhere, and if I hold shift and type in @ I can then tell it specifically what I want that rectangle size to be. So if I want 1.5 kilometers, I can do 1500 comma let's say 1200, and then that rectangle has really nice known extents for me. That one may be too big, but that's a really useful way to it means you can replicate this rectangle nice and easily if you need to. So now I'm ready to export this rectangle. I could of course save this file and do a bunch of things, but I'm just demonstrating here. So I am going to type in map export. And I've done this a couple of times, but I am just going to save this as video rectangle shape. So I'm saving over the top. Overwrite this file, yes. And when we get to this, the export options, we want to make sure we're ticking polygon. We also want to make sure we're selecting manually, and we want to tick this box here, which will allow us to click that box. Always keep an eye out down the bottom where it says 1 object selected, 0 filtered out, because it can filter out more complex geometry on you, and that can be really frustrating because you think you've brought in a layer that's got all the pieces in it that you want, and in actual fact it doesn't. In this case, I'm just going to come straight to my options, as the only other thing I'm going to say is treat closed polylines as polygons. I can bring data through as well, but we won't go into that today. So we'll just go OK, and that has exported that very tiny shapefile. So if I come across now to my QGIS file, I can search for that, and I've just stuck it in the same spot in here, and we called that one video rectangle shape. Of course, it has all its friend files. Anytime you make a shape file, it has these kind of friend files, and you need to keep them together or else it doesn't know where it lives in the world. So that was that rectangle that we made. It might do some interesting stuff through the middle of that DEM there where there's a hole, but we'll just see how we go. One thing I tend to do is I change the properties of our rectangle. Just if you click on it and right click and go to properties, you can come across to the simple fill, and you can give it a transparent fill just by ticking that at the top, and you can make the stroke color, something you can see, which, let's just see if that's thick enough for us. It should be. Apply and OK. Yeah, it's fine. So while we are in here, we want to do our clip that we know is exactly in the right spot. You'll see here there are, actually just let's get rid of those. If I don't have anything in my processing toolbox, which I've opened up through here, you can see that there's a whole lot of QGIS tools, and there are raster tools within QGIS. But when we installed QGIS, actually the ones we're probably looking at are bunch in there, but when we install QGIS, we also ticked, you just want to make sure that you have also ticked the GDAL, GRASS and Saga. So there are sometimes some better tools in the GDAL and the Saga. So if I type in clip now, it will give me a bunch of options. So under GDAL, it's saying clip raster by extent, or clip raster by mask layer in the GDAL tools, and in the Saga we can see that we've also got clip raster with polygon. Now sometimes one of these will work better than the other, and I can't actually tell you why one works better than the other for specific projects, but that seems to be how it works. Now, one thing that seems to also upset QGIS if I don't do this, I need to save this project somewhere before it can understand where it might put a temporary processing file. So sometimes I don't save QGIS files, but if I am clipping or doing something where it needs to do a processing in the background, it does seem to be necessary to save it. So I've saved it, and the first one I'm going to try is the clip raster by mask layer this is a GDAL tool. We can tell because when you click on it, it shows an algorithm ID GDAL clipping raster, but I can also just come down here under GDAL and go OK, clip raster by mask layer. Double click. Input layer, I've just got one raster in there, which is the DEM, and it knows that I only have one masking layer in there as well. If these were different coordinate reference systems, you would probably need to give it a target coordinate reference system. But since they're both the same, we should be able to leave that as it is. And then down the bottom here, use input layer data type. Sometimes you do want to change the data type, but I don't want to in this circumstance. And so long as you're not getting any errors in this box, that all should be fine, and it will just give you a temporary file. You don't even need to give it a name, it'll just call it clipped mask. So we'll run that. And that was really quick, and it looks fine. So I'll turn off the original DEM, and we can see that that is clipped to that rectangle just as we wanted. But of course, because that is a temporary file, we need to export that and save it as something else. So GeoTIFF is fine. There are plenty of other things you could save it as, and you just need to give it a name and tell it where you want to save it. If that is giving you an error, there's a lot of different variables that might be going wrong there, but probably your first point of call would be to try running the Saga tool instead, which is clip raster with polygon. So you might just double click that. It will give you, well, you need to select your correct DEM, and then you need to select your correct polygon. I would still save to a temporary part file and then export, and then this one takes a lot longer to run. Unfortunately, I can't tell you why that takes a lot longer to run, but it does. And so long as there's no red or anything, you'll see that that has popped up over the other side here. Whoops. It's popped up over the other side here as a thing called clipped. So they have both worked in very much the same way. I don't think there's much difference between them, and you need to just export those temporary files to something that something and somewhere that you know you can use it. Just while I'm here, the other thing is that exporting them to different file types is necessary if you want to use them in 3ds Max. Because it doesn't sort of enjoy specific file types, so we'll talk about that in another video. Alright, thanks very much.